Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our 1111 Tech Takes Live in the Console series.
We're going to cover 1111 Systems Network as a Service today and describe why that's so important for unifying networking and cloud. We've got a great agenda for you over the next 20 to 30 minutes to chat through around why networking is a challenge in modern IT. Many of you have lived these challenges, so they'll probably sound familiar to you. Why networking is more than just circuits, especially in our modern world with all these different cloud components and end users, which we'll get into in a moment. And then we'll conclude today with the demonstration of the 1111 Cloud Console, where 1111 provides the ability to manage production, hosting, disaster recovery, storage, other elements like that, but also key visibility and monitoring into the network stack as well. So up front, we're really going to paint the picture that, again, many of you live day in and day out or have lived over the past few years of where some modern networking challenges exist within an IT environment. So what does this look like? So I myself have experienced this where I worked at organizations where previously the data, the applications, the end users were in-house within the environment. And really, from a networking perspective, the biggest challenges to networking were resources that were outside the organization, how you give access to that, right? But clearly, things have evolved a lot in the past 5, 10 years, where a lot of organizations, hospital systems, manufacturing plants, and of course, remote employees and end users distributed everywhere. But also, a really big change has happened, not just in the users being everywhere, but also data and applications being a number of spaces as well. We've clearly seen in the past number of years, organizations move from the hub, the center of their networking universe being a headquarters or data center to instead being more around cloud services that may or may not include on-prem stuff as well. And for a lot of organizations, this is a great thing. This is a step in the right direction where they can scale faster, they have global reach, they have more resiliency. Cloud has solved a lot of problems and provided a great path for a lot of organizations. But at the same time, moving to the cloud has introduced a number of challenges that a lot of organizations have to contend with as well. So you could probably think of hundreds of challenges if you've gone through these steps yourselves, but I typically boil it down to really 5 main talking points, where a key one would be performance, for example. When all your data and end users were local, things operated at the LAN level speed, lightning fast, low latency, great performance. But as you move applications and data to the cloud, performance becomes a real consideration. Are my end users happy with the performance they're getting with remote applications? If I'm doing data protection or moving to the cloud, is it moving at the speed that I need it to? Uptime's another really big one. As organizations move resources to the cloud, they often put a lot of pressure on single circuits from one environment to that cloud environment to be up all the time. And unfortunately, if the cloud environment's up, but the network going to that branch location, that retail chain, or even the office building goes down or is impacted, all services go down, all productivity halts. So it's really critical, of course, to have diverse, resilient connectivity as you move resources to the cloud. Same thing with security, right? With end users everywhere, with data everywhere, it becomes very difficult to find that right balance of giving people access to what they need, being able to log it and track it, and keeping things secure at the end of the day. All of this, of course, impacts the bottom line. Some organizations know these challenges, but some, as they move more and more to the cloud, are surprised about, again, the impact from a networking perspective and the cost of trying to address that. And then last but not least, as we see often with cloud, a lot of organizations don't have a ton of expertise of how to run platforms or migrate things to the cloud. The same becomes the challenge with networking in the cloud as well. How do you tie this all together? How do you maintain visibility across a number of different environments and locations? So needless to say, a lot of challenges. For those of you that have dealt with this, maybe this sounds familiar, but let's talk a little bit about how organizations are trying to approach this piece of it. And one really big way is really knowing that this is more than just the raw connectivity. What do I mean by that? Well, when we think about connectivity, there's certainly layers to it, and we'll go into more depth on the next slide. But at a first glance, there's really that, hey, there are organizations or parts of organizations getting that data from point A to point B. That could be internet packages, voice services, other things like that. And it's a really critical part of the network environment. But when we start talking about some of the challenges from a moment ago, data being all over the place, there's a real need for organizations to say, hey, if I've got 5 locations, 10 locations, a good number of locations that could go into the hundreds, if not higher, for some industries, how do you make sense of all that? How do you have all those different contracts? And as you have different geographic locations, whether it's within a certain country or at a global scale, how do you keep track of which vendors you're working with? There are often different carriers, different circuit providers based on the geographic location. And that could be a real challenge as well. And that's really where something like network as a service comes into play, in addition to aggregation, in addition to connectivity providers. So again, we have the raw circuits themselves. We have organizations that can combine contracts and do vendor management from an aggregator perspective. But network as a service is really meant to add in and layer critical things like monitoring and management of those circuits, where you get the most out of them. It's where organizations provide some of their own capabilities to get better MTTR, and if you're not familiar with that, mean time to resolution, right? Or better performance or better global reach. And then, of course, professional services related to helping assess environments and make all this work. Now, if you're on the call today, you may be thinking, well, hey, I do some of that myself. And that's really oftentimes where a do-it-yourself approach comes into play. And if you've carried the burden of that before, you know there's a lot of responsibility that comes from a do-it-yourself approach to networking at the end of the day, because the do-it-yourself approach goes well beyond networking. Typically, if you're doing this in-house, it's not just the circuits, it goes on to hardware updates, purchasing hardware, doing the software updates, monitoring and managing it, providing expertise. And again, while carriers and aggregators are very valuable to have access to and can truly help get the data from point A to point B, there's a lot still on a lot of organizations' shoulders if all they do is work at a circuit level or an aggregation level. And that's where 1111 and a network as a service provider approach can provide a lot of value at the end of the day, because we do quite a bit more than just provide the circuits. And we'll cover it in a moment, but 1111 has access to hundreds of carriers at a global scale. We can do the aggregation, we can do the NOC support of it, but above and beyond that, we can do the hardware procurement, the management, the break fix. We can help organizations with automation and virtualization layer when it comes to networking, as well as virtual guests. There's a ton we can do when it comes to subject matter experts, whether it's a network operations center or NOC, or more critically, typically a SOC, which is a security operations center, which focuses really on next-gen threat detection, mitigation, and other things like that at the network layer. That's all really critical stuff. But as we started our conversation today saying unifying networking and cloud, our organization also is uniquely positioned, as many of you may know, working with 1111 in the past, to help when it comes to the virtualization layer, a bit of detail of what we mean by what 1111 can do on the network as a service side. At a high level, when we think about 1111 network as a service, you can think of it as us really checking a number of boxes that a lot of organizations have gaps with. Of course, there's the connectivity piece, right? Right off the bat, if you need connectivity, again, we can work with hundreds of different carriers at a global scale to provide, whether it's private circuits getting from point A to point B with a point-to-point wave, Ethernet, LAN, other things like that, certainly. We can also work from a broadband, direct internet access, satellite wireless perspective to provide internet access. And then, of course, as we've talked about, and we'll talk about later on in the presentation, we can do quite a bit when it comes to integrating multiple clouds together. 1111 as a cloud service provider has over a dozen global data center locations powered on VMware that we can integrate into the other cloud providers such as AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and others at scale. We know a lot of organizations are really embracing a multi-cloud approach, and we have some great ways with our network connectivity, whether it's ports that give access to all of them, the ability to manage it, our own direct circuits. There's quite a bit we can do to unify that piece of it. We spoke earlier, but security is obviously critical. So our ability to step in with managed firewalls that have security operations center backed capabilities is a real value to a lot of our customers there. And if we think back to that performance challenge that a lot of organizations face, We can also help maximize and optimize performance. We have great partnerships and in-house capabilities on the SD-WAN side, so that as we help customers have resilient or diverse circuits and carriers, we can put technology in place that makes the best of them and chooses the best path for your traffic, again, leading to better uptime, better performance as a whole. But also we know that while there's a big focus on the cloud piece and how to integrate that, a lot of organizations are challenged with this idea of, well, who manages their internal network environments. I know it's cliche to say people are doing more with less and staff members are wearing a lot of hats. But organizations that we work with often have the challenge of having a generalist or somebody focusing on the infrastructure and networking and all these other details, and switching, routing, Wi-Fi, and LAN is maybe not done by a specialist or takes team time away from other critical tasks. And we can truly help with that at the end of the day. We're going to focus on this in just a moment at the end of our conversation. But our ability to provide our console, which not only gives visibility and control on the cloud side, but also integration of the connectivity story and networking capabilities as well, is really key. And then last, but certainly not least, as we talked about on the multi-cloud side, we find a lot of organizations leverage 1111 for data protection capabilities, our object storage partnership, which has leading capabilities there, and certainly for organizations that are moving to the cloud, maybe due to recent changes with Broadcom licensing, or really wanting to step into a VMware-based cloud provider at the end of the day. So just another way of thinking of it, when you think of our portfolio and where we can help on the network as a service side, multi-cloud connectivity, again, integrating all those different cloud environments to make sure that you can embrace which cloud serves your organization best, or which clouds, I should say, and tie those all together in a way where it all works. We can take the burden off your hands of having to do internal management of networking capabilities, which is critical for a lot of team members. We can maximize performance. But on the network consulting side, wanted to tap on this as well. We see a lot of organizations that struggle with, how do I improve my connectivity? How do I make this work better within my environment? And because of that, from a network consulting perspective, we could come in and look to see where we can do optimization, where we can actually fix things, collaborate together and make it better. But we can also begin with assessments and design. So often we could come in and look and say, where are the bottlenecks from a networking perspective? Or where are there gaps or flaws in the design? Where can we help better justify budget or spend within your environment? And how can we make that better for you? We talked about it briefly, but just to double down on the firewall side, with so many end users and data in so many locations, it's really critical to have a strategy of how to secure the edge and how to better give access in a secure manner to cloud resources and cloud capabilities. And our managed firewall capabilities are phenomenal. They give access to our network operations center as well as our security operations center for threat hunting, detection, a true next-gen approach to securing the edge, which is really critical. And then last, but certainly not least, as we've talked about, our organization has access to hundreds of carriers globally and can help look at, with automated quoting tools, where carriers give better diversity or performance or capabilities for environments at a global scale, and where we can aggregate that together to remove the burden of delivery, contract management, maintenance, monitoring, support that a lot of organizations have to take on themselves. So what does this look like? It's always interesting to hear about challenges, but it's usually even more interesting to see how have we solved these challenges for other organizations, potentially like yours. Well, this is one of many different customer stories here, but I like this one because it simply refers back to a lot of the challenges we mentioned before. When I run into organizations that have network complexity, it often comes through acquisitions or IT baggage or debt at the end of the day. And just as an organization we work with, it certainly had a lot of acquisitions. They were doing fast-paced acquisitions, 2 per month on average, which is pretty staggering. And as you can imagine, this created IT sprawl. A lot of challenges in standardizing connectivity. You're typically talking about multiple vendors, multiple carriers, and multiple strategies at the end of the day. And no surprise, circuits were purchased from multiple providers, and this caused a lot of complexity and a real lack of centralized management. If you're familiar with stories like this or you've lived it, you're now managing vendors. You've become sort of a contractor with subcontractors, and time and effort goes into that at the end of the day. As you can imagine, if you have a lot of spend on contracts, there's a limited flexibility in how you scale. How do you make this repeatable if you're sort of bleeding from a financial perspective when it comes to connectivity? And this particular customer was trying to do the right things, and they were leveraging somebody, in this case, for Fortinet management, but they had gaps in it. And as we mentioned before, security operations center, network operations capabilities are really critical. So what did 1111 provide? Again, one example of a number that we could pick from here, but reliability was a really big one. When it came to working with this customer, they wanted to test it out. They wanted to make sure that we could make this work, as they'd had issues with third-party management before. But this worked phenomenally for them. And now we're managing multiple sites across multiple locations for them. But the really big takeaways, and this is very common when we work with organizations, we mentioned performance, cost, security, expertise are all gaps a lot of organizations have. Well, by looking at the ability to quote hundreds of providers and do aggregation and do on-net services, 1111 was able to help this organization save 25% versus a do-it-themselves approach. We were able to take those number of different providers and really start doing centralized management and aggregation. That helps with support, that helps with turn up, that helps with faster time to resolution, and certainly can help with the cost and time spent perspective. And then last but not least, phenomenal security operations center team and network operations center team internally here at 1111 Systems, where we do weekly meetings, proactive support. And this really led the way with this and a number of other customers of expanding and ultimately gaining credibility on the cloud services side. So you may hear things in there that remind you of your own environment, or certainly some of the challenges we talked about before, but day in and day out, we see organizations that want to improve their network capabilities struggle on their own, and really there's a lot we can provide there. So in summary, you can really think of us as providing turnkey solutions that could be on site to us between your own environments or integrated the cloud or all the above. You can think of us for flexible contracts, the ability to burst up, burst down, migrate. You can think of, like we just mentioned in the customer example a moment ago, being able to have access to hundreds of carriers, be able to use automated quoting and really help with the right design and often cost savings there. The management and monitoring, which I'll show more in just a moment in the 1111 Cloud Console, is critical, and we can help with that whether we sell the circuit or not. We know that a lot of organizations sign longer-term contracts on the connectivity side, may not be looking to rip and replace all of them, but still see value in aggregating the visibility across those sites. It's pretty critical. As we mentioned before, a lot of customers, maybe your org's the same way, are leveraging multiple cloud providers. So being able to embrace hybrid cloud is critical. In fact, 1111 Systems uses a significant amount of AWS or Amazon Web Services SiteLink. This is Amazon's own backbone as well. And we can provide great global performance to many, many regions of the globe, and being able to leverage AWS for those purposes, which integrates cloud, integrates performance connectivity, which is great. And for organizations that care to, many of these services are available through the Amazon Marketplace, which makes it really easy to consume and build at the end of the day. So what I'd like to do for you is bring up a demonstration that'll show you a little bit more about what our 1111 Cloud Console looks like. Now, if you are newer to 1111 Systems, you may not be familiar with our Cloud Console, but it's really designed to provide our customers with, I know it's cliche to say, but a single interface that powers much of their IT environment as possible. And why does that matter? We've been talking a lot about connectivity, but at the end of the day, on the cloud side, organizations are using cloud in so many different ways these days, and that's why multi-cloud is a thing. Organizations use it for production hosting, where they actually have their data and applications being served in the cloud. Often they're using it for replications. Rather than having a secondary site of their own, they use cloud to do disaster recovery and power a second environment in case of a failure or a cyber event. Certainly data protection is a big part of that as well. But that's really what 1111 provides and what our cloud interface is designed to do. So what I'll do here for you is I'll actually pull this onto the screen and showcase a little bit around the 1111 Cloud Console so you can see that in action. So bear with me 1 second, and I will pull that onto the screen, and we'll take a look at that in action. So on the screen, you'll see the 1111 Cloud Console. And as I mentioned before, this interface is really designed to give you flexible management, visibility, and control across a number of services related to a cloud environment. You can see in the drop-down list here, 1111 again provides production and disaster recovery cloud resources where customers can come in and use wizard-driven approaches to fail over an environment into ours, or for organizations looking to get out of the infrastructure game or that have been impacted by a recent licensing or subscription model change, they can move their resources into our environment and have a VMware powered environment without the renewal costs or any of the headaches of running their own infrastructure. But we also know, again, for a lot of people, they're embracing software as a service. One of the most common ones is Microsoft 365. And in the same interface as we do production, VMware, hosting, and disaster recovery, we can provide customers at a global scale the ability to manage and recover workloads that they've been protecting in Microsoft 365 into 1111 and do self-service of mailbox, emails, Teams data, SharePoint, and other things like that, all from a single pane of glass. And of course, as organizations have adopted object storage, many of them work with 1111 due to our leading pricing and capabilities on it. With the same interface, it's possible for a customer to manage object storage for Amazon through the same interface for their cloud, their on-prem backup, and their 365 backup. So our 1111 Cloud Console is really designed to provide great capabilities, take the complex of a number of interfaces and really consolidate them down into a singular approach. And the great news with our connectivity story is this is the same theme and the same sort of capabilities for our customers. Within our connectivity tab, this is where a customer, whether we've provided the circuit or not, can have visibility to monitoring across a global environment and have dashboard, the interfaces, device support, a lot of different key components of making a network environment work and having the visibility necessary, again, all from a singular interface. So what you see here in the Cloud Console is I once again have the ability as an end user to toggle between any of the 1111 services that I'm leveraging. That can be production hosting, backup, object storage, or of course connectivity. And in the connectivity tab here, I have a single view showing me all the different locations that I am currently having network capabilities with. I have the ability from this interface to zoom in at a device level, an alert level, an interface level, and get more detail. Now, a couple things to point out here. Along the way, as I look at it from an environment level or a device level, I also have the ability within the same interface to create support tickets and get the resources and capabilities I need from an 1111 management or resource perspective there as well. So I could create new tickets, I could view documentation related to the 1111 Cloud Console and some of the service capabilities that customer has there, all without leaving the 1111 Cloud Console, which is a powerful thing indeed. Again, with us potentially doing monitoring and management end-to-end from on-prem, the edge, the last mile, the cloud, the direct connects, and all the integration there, we can often do a much faster time to resolution because there's less finger pointing and more solving by our end there. Of course, if we can do monitoring and management at a device level, we can also do the same at an interface level. So I'll zoom in a little bit faster here, and you'll again see that at a global scale, I can continue zooming in and seeing key details around the status of the interface, but also some key things related to how performance would be impacted, right? By errors, my throughput and utilization of things within the environment, anything impacting the performance of the environment, and of course, the ability to see exactly what I need within the parameters I need and be able to export that in a Excel, CSV format, or an image-based format as well. So the summary of it, of course, is with the Cloud Console, the story is spending less time trying to track down things, logging into a number of different interfaces, and getting the details, the visibility, the access that you truly need, all from a single pane of glass, whether that's a combination of production hosting, doing data protection like backup or DR, hosting Microsoft 365 backups, keeping archive and long-term storage from a cloud perspective in a very cost-effective, resilient manner, or of course, being able to weave that story all together with connectivity. At the end of the day, 1111 can help out quite a bit with that story. So I'd love to say thank you for joining us as part of this presentation today. Obviously, if you have questions, we are happy to follow up with you.